Yeah, Dear Diary, Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri, suggested one more entry into that Hello Kitty diary that Tony Fauci was keeping after yesterday's hearing. This was Hawley's close.
At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time. I don't know. But I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary.
I mean, that was just a withering takedown. By far the most vicious takedown of the morning yesterday in the Senate Homeland Security Committee. And appropriate. Appropriate. There's all the discussions of the different sub-issues under COVID, from lockdowns to contact tracing to masks to social distancing to origin. But at the end of the day, this guy, what is the drop on this guy? And I think Holly came as close to nailing it as anybody has. Bad guy. So debate all of these issues and what we thought we knew, what, you remember us knowing or not knowing at the time as we went through this over years and are still taking stock of the consequences from the terrible public policy choices that were made. But this guy, and for a megalomaniac like Tony Fauci to choose to agree with the legal strategy of invoking his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, and to have to sit there and take it like he did, takedowns like that from Josh Hawley and others, Rand Paul, Bernie Moreno, that must have been very difficult for him. Drew Holden writes in his Substack, Holden Court, drewholden.substack.com. He joins us now. Drew, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
The pleasure is mine, Dan. Thanks so much for having me on.
So your sort of top-line takeaways from yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit surprising, at first, when he pled the fifth, right? Anthony Fauci in his diary is so verbose. He has so many things to say. He is so much that he is so interested in everyone knowing about him. And I think the thing that really killed me was the smirk of it all, right? I'm still better. I'm still smarter. All of this will blow over. He tweeted, it said an AI image of himself that said good versus evil. And I think my top line takeaway was it's unbelievably valuable that he is being publicly held to account. We can't drop this story. Right. This is potentially the biggest story on science since, I don't know, the moon landing, maybe longer. Like the potential of this story is so unthinkable that America's top doctor could have used American taxpayer dollars to help supercharge a virus run in a lab by the CCP that could have led to the most dangerous pandemic in 100 years, the most deadly pandemic in 100 years. So it is enormously valuable that we're still talking about it, but I can't get over his smirk and his self-righteous foolhardiness.
Well, and I know people, myself included, feel, unsatisfied until and unless there is a more substantial legal reckoning. But and I understand there are dyed-in-the-wool COVIDians. No matter what is said, they will ignore it. They will fall back into the decisions they took during COVID out of a sense of self-preservation, if nothing else. But the reputational damage that he did to himself is irreparable. And I mean, and as I said, not just for him to sit there and take it, but the indelible images, the blown up cover of In Style magazine with him sitting by a pool and the shades on, juxtaposed against people that are not allowed to see their loved ones on their deathbed. Him having dinners with Jake Tapper at his home while people are not allowed to gather with their family for Thanksgiving. So on and so on. I mean, all of those compare and contrast. I mean, he's not going to be able to get out from underneath those. I mean, that's going to be a significant part of his epitaph.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think obviously that's very well deserved, but I think the real damning thing about what he did is that might also be the epitaph on trust in public science in this country.
Yeah.
At least for the foreseeable future, maybe the rest of my lifetime. Right. Because by taking on the mantle of the science, the smartest man in the room, the one making all these decisions, and blowing it so badly and doing it in such a deliberately deceptive and malicious way, I think he has done enormous, maybe incalculable damage to our ability to trust and understand science, particularly for younger people, right? I think there's been some interesting writing from younger folks of late about how how could I ever trust anything the government tells me? How could I possibly believe anything a doctor or a scientist has to say?
Well,
I think
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it also speaks to this idea that going into government is just to be an amoral pursuit of self-aggrandizement and personal enrichment.
Yep.
And it's not just the politicians, it's this guy too. I mean, the Hawley thing I thought that was devastating was going through all of the staffers that he scrambled to go out and search for awards to be conferred onto him, particularly those with cash prizes, and to make sure he could keep the cash prizes. Again, and this is at the same time as people are dying and terrible public policies are necessarily inflicting harm or worse on people and their businesses and their life and their general lives and so forth. So that the idea that no one can be trusted because not just because they're incompetent, but because they don't care about what happens to you,
right.
And they will use you as the means to their own ends without regard.
Right, without regard, no matter the circumstances, right? To think that he could be doing all of this, not just at a moment in time where there are some people who are suffering, where our country is shut down because of a pandemic, where he is saying you can't be within 3 feet or 6 feet of another human, right? And I think to your point, the side-by-sides and the contrast of the way he conducted himself, the way he talked, and the way everyone had to live because of him is just so repellent. And you're right, it will be on his epitaph. It'll be on, I think the long-term historical view of the COVID pandemic in this country.
What just on the legal side of this, Rand Paul and Josh Hawley took the same position that basically you don't have the right to invoke your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because you've been pardoned for the questions we're asking you about that would potentially expose you to legal jeopardy. And because of that belief, Rand Paul going to move forward with a contempt of Congress resolution that once passed out of committee, he will refer to the Department of Justice. What do you think in terms of, and then you also had Tommy Tuberville talk about state level action. You've had the AG in Florida talk about state level action, investigation into the possibility of charges. I mean, do you see any realistic chance that there will be a criminal prosecution of Tony Fauci, either at the federal or state level?
Yeah, I think when you open it up to potentially the state level, I do. And maybe that's too optimistic, but I think that Senator Paul's approach to have him on the record again to do something that could potentially either undercut the pardon that Joe Biden or maybe Joe Biden's auto pen gave Fauci on his way out the door, or even just weakened it. Right. I think one of the other big components of the pardon and why it might be on shakier grounds than maybe a pardon normally would be is that it's an untested legal theory about how broad it was. So I definitely think the only way we could possibly get the resolution that the American people deserve and that justice deserves with Fauci was to haul him back in front of Congress. And maybe he pleads the fifth, but at least he's saying something, right? So that could be potential political or legal ammunition against him. And so I'm encouraged by it, right? I think that the most important thing in the story now is that we can't lose sight of the awful, unconscionable damage that Anthony Fauci did. And there has to be a way to hold him accountable.
And what of the DC press corps? I mean, we're not even done excoriating them over the Biden mental acuity and so many others of the last 10 years under President Trump. So many other Russiagate, so many other examples of frauds they've perpetrated or helped to facilitate. And here again, it's some of the same cast of characters. Basically, the entire on-air propaganda personality set, CNN and Chuck Todd, all these people that were flacks for Fauci, that were having private friendships with him while pretending to be the presenters of just objective science. I mean, there has to be. I don't know what you do with respect to those outlets and those individuals, other than just to continue to present the record again and again, so that anything that they offer up is properly viewed through a jaundiced eye.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it is the most significant failure of media coverage on anything in my lifetime, right? And I have a really, really hard time finding another example. Like maybe the start of the war with Spain in the 1800s. Like I don't know when there has been such a kind of mass failure of the media from their own willful blindness on anything in many, many years, many, many decades. And I think you're right. I mean, I think there's like every time CNN posts a story, I think the American people should look at that headline and remember the Chris Cillizza headline, Anthony Fauci just crushed Donald Trump's theory on COVID origins. Anytime ABC News posts a story, I want people to think, sorry, conspiracy theorists, there's now proof that COVID didn't start in a lab. Right, like I want these awful headlines. I've got all of them on my Substack and my Twitter. I want people, when they think of these outlets, when they think of USA Today, I want them to remember the fact check they had, that even the possibility of a lab leak as a theory of origin for COVID was false. I want them to remember that those are the people who are trying to convey to them what's fact and what's fiction for the rest of their time on this earth. Yeah. And I want that to weigh very heavily on their perception of these outlets.
Just need like a 10-page community note with every posting from any of those outlets, right?
Truly, yeah. I wish there could be. I wish there could, like the FCC or something could do like a little sound bite, right? Whenever they have a recorded piece online or on their airwaves. Otherwise, it has done irreparable damage to the already really limping along credibility of the legacy media. And I don't think they'll ever get out from under it. And quite frankly, I hope they don't, unless they make some really, really meaningful changes, unless heads roll, unless there is a serious mea culpa about everything that they did.
Drew Holden writes at his Substack, Holden Court. That's drewholden.substack.com. Drew, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me back on.
Yep. Take care. And Drew joined us in the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. On AM 560. The Answer. Maybe you've thought about taking